My name is Nico Lagan, and I'm too conservative for the conservatives. My co host, Rob Ambrose, not woke enough for the liberals. We are the political orphans. Tonight, we have a full episode that's going to be a bit different than when we do normally. By different, I mean the topic is different because we've never approached it before, which I'm very, very happy that we're able to do so today. So, tonight, we are joined by journalist Mocha Bezirgan and the father of Jackson Joseph, who was killed in the Humboldt Bronco bus killing, Chris Joseph. And the reason that they're both here tonight is to speak about foreign interference. This is something that we keep on hearing in the news. This is something that the RCMP spoken about. This is something that CSIS has spoken about. But we want to address it because this is something that Mocha does literally every time I see him post on X. That's what he's talking about. And there might be a connection with Chris's son, which this is where I wanted to start the conversation. Before we go, hi, hello, good night. Thanks for joining us. Where I wanted to take this, I wanted to ask both of you, because obviously, Chris, the situation in which you are in because of your son, and Mocha because of the research that you do, is there a connection between the World Sikh Organization and the Humboldt Bronco killer? And again, Chris, I don't know why I always apologize, but I always feel bad to say it that way. I just refuse to say his name. I will never use the name of somebody that killed people. I will never promote his name. So my apologies if it sounds wrong. But is there a connection here? Is there something going on between the World Sikh Organization and the man that killed your son?
Well, I mean, at first I learned a lot since April 6, 2018. I wouldn't say anything that I know of is direct, but I know there are many indirect connections. The one example that I'm aware of is one politician that was a Calgary politician named Chahal. He started a petition in the House of Commons to try to get Mr. Sidhu to not be deported. His father was a member of the World Sikh Organization. There's always been questions in my minds too, who's funding his defense. I think Mocha has more information than I do on this, but unfortunately for me, I've learned the hard way. And, the more I learn, the uglier it sort of gets.
Wow. Yeah, if I may add, basically, George Jahal at the time was a Liberal MP, and Sidhu was living in his riding, and Jahal advocated on behalf of him to stay in Canada, basically interfering, as some would put, with the justice system, because his deportation order is not a punishment. It's the natural consequence of committing a crime. Anyone in Canada who is here as a permanent resident or a refugee or tourist, when you commit a crime, you get deported. That's just what happens. It's nothing special against him. It's not a punishment. It's not punitive. It's natural. But George wanted to give him an exemption to stay in Canada, and I think it's pretty abhorrent. I don't understand how someone could advocate a position like that, basically interfering with the justice system. But yes, there is a connection to the World Sikh Organization, and that connection is his father. His father, Ram Ragbir Jahal, was the international president of World Sikh Organization. And World Sikh Organization, based on all the hard research done by independent researcher Bob Ray, which I have studied in depth, is the most powerful Khalistani organization in the world, and it has its roots, its origins are pretty controversial. Glorification of violence, glorification of terrorism, extremism. It was born in the early 1980s And I have done a lot of reporting on this. We could, anyone interested, they could go and check it out. But it's a very extensive and large subject. It almost sounds unbelievable that such an organization exists, continues to exist, and has such a powerful influence, had a powerful influence, continues to have a powerful influence over Canadian politics. And basically they claim to represent every Sikh in Canada, but obviously not every Sikh associates themselves with them, and not every Sikh appreciates their extremism. And the question arises, like, I don't want to get off on track here, but what if a Japanese person were to be involved in this accident? What would they do if they caused something like this? They ran over a stop sign. I believe
they would leave.
They would commit suicide.
Oh yeah, probably even that. Yeah.
I asked that question to myself. God forbid, if I did something like, what would I do? Well, I certainly wouldn't be around. I certainly would not be trying to stay in a country where, I certainly would not continue to attract attention on me, on media, and on my troubles. And it almost feels like this individual, Mr. Sidhu, has no capacity or sympathy for others and for what he has done. And I did not know this until I met Chris, and we did that interview, and he explained everything in that half an hour long interview, which was basically hidden from us for years by the mainstream media. As Chris explained, how CBC was manipulatively editing footage, keeping, certain comments out that doesn't fit their narrative, etc. And Chris can speak more onto that. But now everyone knows, and everyone can see that, hey, there's something very wrong here. You have a guy who has committed a horrible crime, and he is attracting all the attention to himself even after those years. He cares about himself. And then you have a community that's standing up for him to stay in Canada. You have George Jahal petitioning the government. You have some intellectuals. You have some journalists, some politicians saying he already served his time, which was 3.5 years. They say he already served his time. You don't need to punish him further by deporting him to India. But the deportation is not a punishment. It's just a natural result.
And it's not a punishment to send an Indian back to India, right? That's where they're from. That's their home. It's not, I bet you he goes home for vacations and he probably doesn't see it as punishment there. But I think you're right, Mocha. I think it speaks to his character. And I think character is at the heart of this discussion right now. Is why would he even want to stay, right? Why would you want to stay here and draw all this? Like you said, most people, well, maybe not most people would kill themselves, although some definitely would, but most people would have at least the grace to slink away, to bow out and get the fuck out of here where people don't want you here.
Right.
So there's a couple of things I just want to make sure. I want to reiterate a bit what you said, Mocha, and make sure that I understood you properly. But you basically said that the connection between the Humboldt Bronco killer, and that's how I'm going to call him, and the World Sikh Organization is his father was a high-level member,
like a big wig in the
high-level member of the World Sikh Organization. Do you and this is speculative? The question I'm going to ask.
Father.
Oh, who did you say? My apologies.
I said the local MP from his.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah, I misunderstood that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the local MP that Chris mentioned that defended him, that basically wanted him to stay, his father was a big wig for the World Sikh Organization. I get you. Correct. I understand. So Would you say, and that question goes to both Chris and you, whoever wants to take it first, would you call that a direct connection? Would you call that the World Sikh Organization standing up for what we could call one of their own? Is that why you think that the community is still behind a guy that literally killed 16 people? Like, this is insane to me that we're even having that conversation and this man is still here. Makes no sense to my brain. No sense whatsoever. That he's out of prison doesn't even make sense to me, yet alone that he's still in Canada. But do you think that there's a direct connection between the two, or is it just really more indirect, and it is just a community trying to stand up for their own?
Well, if I may go first, every community would want to stand up for their members, but not when they are wrong. You're not supposed to do that when somebody is wrong, when you know. But the World Sikh Organization, although they did not publicly commented, as far as my knowledge goes, they did not publicly commented on this subject about Sidhu. But we could judge their character based on other instances and other subjects that they commented on and the positions they took. For example, there was a man in the early 1900s who killed, well, his name was Miva Singh. He killed a Canadian immigration officer, a Canadian immigration and intelligence officer. He shot him dead inside Vancouver courthouse, inside of a courthouse, in the hallway. He shot him dead. He emptied an entire gun and then emptied another gun on his dead body. He kept on shooting, an unarmed immigration officer. Wow. And the World Sikh Organization reveres this character, and they made movies about him, and he is celebrated. Miva Singh was his name.
I've heard the name. I've heard the name.
The Canadian government hanged him for committing this murder. He was convicted and he was hanged. So I think more so whether it's a direct connection or an indirect connection, I think the elephant in the room is the character. The representatives, so-called representatives of this community is putting out there. The character of George Jahal, the character of his father and his organization, the character of Sidhu, the character. Like, what kind of a character is this? Like, why can't you just go away? Why are you on the news? What kind of a character is it for a politician to come out and say he has served his time, he should stay in Canada? It's not up to you to decide. And if they can defend Miva Singh, if they can defend Sidhu, they can defend anyone. And to me, that signals they don't care about other people. They don't care about anybody else outside of their community. And I would go as far as to say they don't even care about the members of their own community. They created this human trafficking, slavery, I would say, where young Punjabi men and women are trafficked into Canada legally with promises that, hey, you would work, you would study, you would work, and then you'll stay in Canada. So that's why none of them wants to go back. They didn't come here to just study and then go back. They came here to study and then stay. So what happens? The Punjabi immigration firms make their money, and these young men and women, they see Canada is not what they sold them to, and it's very difficult to survive. And after their study is done, they have to stay in Canada. Well, what do? They have to buy LMIA. And who sells the LMIA? Well, it's illegal to sell, but it's basically a pathway to stay in Canada. Yeah. So we have seen many examples in court records, allegations, whistleblowers, media, where Punjabi businesses, the big brothers, they would And I have spoken to Punjabi students when they are protesting in Brampton, in Toronto, elsewhere. I have been to their tents. I have spoken with them, published their interviews, and they say how they were exploited, how they were worked under minimum wage. I interviewed a trucker who worked for a Punjabi firm. He spoke very honestly, and he did not censor himself, and so I did not censor him either. But he explained how corrupt it is, and how in the trucking industry that these business owners, they sell pathways to permanent residency to these students so that they don't have to go back to India. And so basically, when you're in a position where you pay $30,000 to work for a trucking company, you have no leverage.
Mm-hmm.
You are paying to work for this guy, and that guy, he could put drugs on your truck. He could make you drive a truck that is not drivable, that should not be on the road. And he doesn't care whether you're a qualified truck driver, whether you have completed your training. He only cares about that $30,000 that he's going to get from you. And you work less than what you're supposed to be paid. And then, yeah, that's the Punjabi community, leaders of this so-called leaders of this community, extorting, exploiting, trafficking their own youth. So if they can do that to their own youth, what will they do to you? What will they do to us?
Yeah, that's I mean, that's a great point. It's one of those, I can tell this interview as we're going down it, there's a whole lot of meat on that bone for sure. There's going to be a lot of topics for us to discuss. And I definitely want to come back to the LMIA thing, but I did want to quickly ask Chris a question. Mocha had just mentioned the CBC interview, the one that you felt that it was being manipulated, and well, not you felt, it was being manipulated, and that they were cutting some words out. I was just wondering, do you remember offhand some of the things that they cut out that would have been bad for the narrative they want to push, but like the kind of things that they are keeping from the Canadian public?
Yeah, thanks. It's some of the things that they kept from us. So Karen Pauls did an interview with my wife and Shauna Nordstrom about 4 years ago.
Okay.
And my wife and Shauna both spoke about some of the character of Sidhu, and that was all chopped. So obviously we're saying negative things about him because we don't feel that he has strong character. But they would chop that stuff. So things like he didn't call 911, he didn't help one person, he did make a phone call to his boss to try to get back into the cab to get the records of the 70 infractions that he had in the previous 11 days. She wanted to paint this picture, and she's successfully done it, but she wanted to paint this picture of this humble man that made a grave mistake and he lives with it every day. And they keep repeating that he feels remorse, but I don't know him. I've never talked to him, and I've said, do you feel remorse? All I see is his actions, and his actions speak the exact opposite of feeling remorse. His actions are what's in it for me. All I've ever seen. So on April 6th, it was what's in it for me. He said, I'm okay. I'm okay. He didn't help anybody. Since then, in parole hearings, he's said, I don't know. I don't recall, over 100 times. It's all about what he can do for himself. And he keeps going back to the media to try and, stay in the country. Now, he's already got 2 Canadian children because this whole thing has been stalled. And now he's waiting on a humanitarian compassionate grounds case, which can take up to 10 years. They're saying right now that it's 2 to 3 years, but there's a backlog, can take up to 10 years. He's going to have 3 or 4 more children by then, all Canadians. How do you think it's going to go then? So this whole narrative that he feels remorse, I don't buy it. I don't see it. The person that I've gotten to know has been in it for himself since day one. And I think, as Mocha just explained, that seems to be a lot of people in that group that are in it for themselves, and they really don't care.
The thing I wanted to ask you, Chris, is as the father of a murdered son or a killed son, how does it make you feel knowing that you have supposedly Canadian politician, that you supposedly have a Canadian community that still supports a man like him? How do you explain that? How does that make you feel?
Well, I can see why some people feel that way. What I've noticed over the last number of years is that people really want to feel good about themselves and they want to be like, oh, I'm forgiving. And Canadians are very, very forgiving people and we're nice people. And they want to be like, well, I want to forgive and I want to feel righteous and I want to, allow him to stay. First thing I want to say to those people is forgiveness is irrelevant, whether you forgive or not. And obviously, I am not forgiving, but even if you are forgiving, it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. So if somebody murders your son with a gun, do you forgive and they don't go to jail? Like, forgiveness is irrelevant. So whether you forgive or not doesn't matter. There has to be rule of law. And I think that's the one area where Canada is weak. We just don't have enforcement. We don't have the rule. I mean, aren't they missing 500,000 claimants right now, the government? They can't find them. They don't know where it is. So there's no rule. Now, I really want people to know that forgiveness is irrelevant. Go ahead, forgive them. I don't care. That shouldn't change the law. The law is the law. And Pierre Poilievre even said that. He's like, the law is clear, And so if you want to feel good about yourself, go ahead. You can forgive him all you want, but you forgive him while he goes back to India.
Sure. Well, that's a very good point. And this is hopefully, Mocha, you can take this one. But Chris, I would really be curious to hear what you have to say about this too. But it's one thing to have one politician support this, or at least call for him to stay. You have a community that seems to be standing behind him. But one of the things that bothers me as a Canadian, that my family's been here for hundreds of years on both side, my mother and my father, what really bothers me the most is when I see our leaders, the Pierre Poilievre of this world, when we see the Mark Carney of this world bow down to such individual, because they all did it. Trudeau did it. Pierre Poilievre did it. He will go to those communities, wear the little headband and play the music, play the little dance, do what he's being told. He's gonna dance like a monkey. Let's call a spade a spade. He's gonna do the monkey dance for the same people that seem to stand up to him. And I cannot, it blows my mind that somehow we allow our politicians to do that with no consequences whatsoever, which seems to indicate to me, and there lies the question for you guys, this seems to indicate that the ties go a lot deeper than we imagine, because why would they be doing the monkey dance for those individuals if there wasn't something else that we're not aware of? And that's something that you talk about all the time, Mocha. What are those ties? How do you explain to the layman's out there that might not know you, that don't know the work that you do? How do you explain to them how our leaders, the Pierre Poilievre of this world, the Justin Trudeau of this world, the Mark Carney of this world, will dance like little monkeys for those people that are, in my opinion, visitors in this country?
Well, basically, if I were to put it in very simple terms, from my perspective, it appears that white communities in Canada, they would just vote. The conservatives seem to always vote for conservatives. Liberal always seem to vote for liberals, and they don't require too much pandering. Maybe they have a few policy expectations, demands. That's it. But they don't require pandering too much. Whereas other communities, other diaspora communities, they have larger demands, and they can demand big things because basically they are a voting bloc and they will vote strategically. They have temples, places of worship that they are connected to, organizations, and that's how diasporas survive in foreign land. So they are much more connected, organized, smart, I would say, how to play politics. And that's why the politicians, day and night, dance to their satisfaction. And yeah, if I were to put it in simple terms, that's what's going on.
Chris, in your opinion, when you see our politicians dance for those individuals, the same people that seem to be backing the men that killed your son, how does it make you feel, not only as a father but as a Canadian? Because to me it's outrageous, absolutely outrageous, that we're catering to the same society that seem to want to keep your son's killer here and to pander to them in order to get their vote. Absolutely blows my mind that that's acceptable. But what's your opinion?
I mean, we often lose faith in our politicians, but to me, that's a selfish move as well. So, when you cater to certain groups, you really lose the backbone of what your foundation should be. There's an old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And obviously I know what I stand for. And even in my house, like I let my kids get away with certain things, but sometimes I have, the rules. And, I've always been frustrated with, this group is special and that group is special. I've always been of the mindset that nobody is special. We're all just regular people. But unfortunately, in politics, especially, they need votes. And so are they going to get it from me? One group's probably going to get it from me, but they know that they're not going to get the votes from me. So they cater to the special interest groups, and those special interest groups, they realize that, and they start to get more and more inroads and more power. But the more you think everybody's special, the less special people really are. I mean, that's just how it is. If everybody's special, then nobody's special. But that's sort of the way it goes. And it's frustrating, because that to me seems like a selfish move as well.
Yeah, that definitely seems like, one of the big negatives about the sort of mass immigration policy that we have, where, expat or diaspora communities kind of all bundled together, and then they're catered to by politicians because they know it'll get their votes. Whereas, there are other groups that, as Mocha was saying, not everyone needs to be pandered to, right? There are other people who will vote on the issues. But then that whole dynamic just really skews the entire concept of democracy. And if it gets to a point, and maybe we're past that point, it just becomes completely unworkable. Mocha, I wanted to go back to something you were talking about. You mentioned the trafficking by this group. It sounds like it's a well-established or a well-oiled machine, where they're bringing these. And I wonder if you could actually kind of go into depth into how this works. So these groups are promising young Sikhs or Indians something. They're getting money, I assume, and they're giving a promise. Funny thing is, the things they're promising are not theirs to give. Right? It is not the World Sikh Organization. They don't. To give them, to give Canadian citizenship or permanent residency or LMIAs, that is not theirs to give. And yet the fact that they're very confident, so confident they're taking money for this, that suggests some really, really deep level corruption. So I was wondering if you could just walk us through what this whole kind of scam.
For sure. So we don't see this scam from the Japanese community. We don't see it from the Swedish community. We don't see it from many other communities, but it seems to be isolated to the Punjabi community. And when I went to the international student protest in Brampton, where students were camping 24/7 in tents, demanding that they be allowed to stay in Canada, this wasn't, well, they present themselves as international students, and yes, they are international students, but the only students there were Punjabi students. And so that's just one example. This is how it works. Many places in the world are like hell, and people want to move to beautiful countries like Canada, Europe, US, etc. So you have Punjabi youth whose parents, they want the best education for them, the best future for them. So the parents will sell their farm to pay Punjabi immigration consultants who have connections in Canada so they can facilitate their trafficking to Canada, basically. And this all goes back to, well, it wasn't always like this. This just goes back to a few years ago, a decade ago. Around 2011, Tim Upal, the Conservative Party deputy leader now, back then he was a MP, he was the Minister of Multiculturalism. He went to Punjab, his motherland, and there he spoke with news reporters, he gave press conferences, and he said, we're going to make Canada the #1 destination for Punjabi students. At the time, there are a few thousand students from India in Canada. So basically, he spearheaded this policy where, and he warned about possible fraud. But back then, he knew there will be potential fraud. And that's what happened. There were lots of fraud. And today, he's defending those students who were defrauded and saying, now they have families here, they should be allowed to stay. And that's the Conservative Party. And the Liberals are not too different. But basically, these students, they were brought here in hundreds of thousands every year. Now they have placed the brakes on it, but so many of them came here. We see the lineups at job fairs where it's just thousands and thousands of Indian students. So that's the policy Tim Upal spearheaded, and Tim Upal's wife was an executive with the World Sikh Organization. So again, we're seeing these patterns where policies that don't benefit Canada, that don't benefit the students from Punjab, but benefit the immigration consultants, the corrupt trucking industry, the Tim Hortons industry.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I go back to the character. If that's the character of the leaders, the powerful leaders of Punjabi community, and that's how they treat their own people, their own youth, of course, no wonder there is no mystery how they would treat you, me, and Sidhu is an example of that.
So let me ask you guys a question. Considering that we're hearing right, left, and center that there is a massive influence going on from India on Canadian soil, that means that they have the right people in the right places within our government. Those agencies that are bringing those people over obviously have connections that we should expose and terminate, not as in kill them, but terminate the connection, the power that those people have. But one of the things that I always think of is kind of to protect Canadians. Do you think, and that's a question I have for both you and Chris, do you think that people that weren't born in Canada or even first generation Canadian should even be allowed to go into politics? Because that's one thing that I've seen. Even the Conservative Party has Indian members that can't even speak English properly. So clearly they're elected by communities in very specific parts of Canada. Let's say a Brampton, for example. I'm not saying that they do have representative elected there, but I'm saying that that's the type of community that would elect those type of member of parliament. Do you think that one of the reasons we could, or one of the ways, my apologies, we could deal with this is by preventing immigrants and first generation Canadians to even be involved in either politics or position of powers that could influence Canada the way that we're seeing, because you're talking 2011, this was brought up, but this is really just something that we see happening since COVID. Because if you look at the immigration stats, it didn't really come from India. It was a very small amount of individuals came from India. But over the past 5 to 6 years, we're talking 30% of immigrants, international students, international workers, people that take advantage of the LMIA. They're a big majority, over 30%. It is the biggest population representation that we see. Literally 1 out of 3 people that come into Canada from a different country is from India. So clearly they've infiltrated Canadian positions of power. Do you think that we need to stop them from being able to get those positions? And I don't know who wants to take that question. If you don't want to answer it, I get it. But does Chris, Mocha, which one of you want to go?
I may go first. Now, the problem that we're dealing with, when we assess the problem and we try to find solutions, the solutions don't really match with our character, with Canadian character, with Canadian values. And that's the problem here. So to ask a question to Chris, to anyone at this point in time in Canada, this is the problem, because the problem is there, but the solutions are out of character. So anyone to say, yeah, this is a problem and this is what we need to do, they will be thrown rocks at for being racist or discriminatory or this or that. And I believe this is my assessment of this problem. There could be many solutions. The term remigration has gained a lot of popularity. You know, you could send back, for example, let's start with people who came here fraudulently. And the government is trying to do something about that. They are trying to retroactively pass laws to send back fake refugee claimants, etc. So, but I believe, this problem is the solutions.
The solution will be unpalatable to a lot of Canadians, but you could say, well, that's our fault for allowing it to get this bad. At some point, we have to have a solution to some of these problems, and if that is uncomfortable for people,
yeah, I guess we have to man up.
What is the solution, before I pass it to Chris, because that's what I'm going to ask you, Chris? What do you think is the solution, Mocha, considering the conversations that you've had? You're probably a lot more aware than I am, at least, as to how deep this goes. But what do you think is the solution? Forget the fact that we're a bunch of pussies in Canada, that we are very complacent, that we never do anything right, it seems like, except let other cultures take advantage of us. What if you had a magic wand and say that we're going to address the problem, how would you suggest we deal with the issue that we're seeing right now, especially when it comes to our immigration issues?
Right. Now, I was born in Istanbul, Turkey. When I was 1 year old, my parents immigrated to Canada, to Toronto. I grew up in Jane and Finch. Not many people know about this, but I actually grew up in the ghetto. And then my parents, they decided to go back to Turkey. And when I was 18, I decided to come back to pursue my education. And ever since then, I've been here. Now I'm 26. Until the age of 21, I lived in Toronto. And then after that, I've been living in Calgary since then. And from my perspective, the solution is not too complicated. We have to first make people aware, educate people on politics and how it works. And if organizations, diaspora communities like the World Sikh Organization have gained so much influence and power in the government, so can we. We can start our own organizations. We can have our own influence. We can have these politicians pander to us. We can say, no, Sidhu is not staying in Canada. And if you're going to take that position, we're not voting for you, for example. So the solution is to make people aware, educate people, come together, and compete, fight in the political arena, and all of that is very hard work for ordinary people. So either as ordinary people have to change our ways and be more active, or we're just going to sit here and let these other communities that are very active eat our lunch and dictate where the country goes, as they have been dictating for a very long time. So that's my solution. We need to make people aware, organize, fight back.
Yeah, Chris.
Oh, hold on, Chris. You're muted. Hold on. There you go.
Okay, so there's always that thought that your local member of parliament should reflect your area, which I get, and there's pockets of immigrants everywhere in Canada, so that I find is a tough one to really fix. One of the issues that I have, and I'm not super political, is I think we need to take away the financial incentive to be a refugee in Canada. So if you look at Sweden, for example, they had an influx that was literally costing their young women getting raped. And they took away the financial incentive to be refugees there, and they're changing course. Like, it can be done. Unfortunately, like I said, it took the rapes of their young women for them to realize that. But it's the financial incentive, I think, that really irks a lot of Canadians. You have refugees in Canada making more money than pensioners. These are people that have lived their whole life in Canada and gave to the system, and they're struggling. And I know it's an American example, but you see the Somali daycares down there, and you're like, what is happening? Like, why are they making so much money to just come to this country and do nothing? And there's an incentive for them to do nothing. People are always wondering, well, we have to replace the population because the Canadian kids aren't reproducing. Well, the Canadian kids don't have the financial incentive to reproduce. The houses are too expensive. Life is too expensive. Honestly, if you want the Canadian kids to reproduce, incentivize them. But instead, so much of that money is going to fake refugee claimants. Another example is the temporary foreign worker program. I've had so many friends talk to me about, well, they're doing jobs that Canadians don't want to do. Well, the Calgary MP, Michelle Rempel-Garner, she just showed the job fair in Calgary. And so, for example, let's say you got to pay a 16 or 17-year-old kid $18 to work at Tim Hortons. Well, if you use temporary foreign workers, the government kicks in, and so you're paying these guys, instead of $18, you're paying them $9 or $10 an hour. So it's slave labor. And I'm sorry, if the narrative is that Tim Hortons can't cut it without these guys, then Tim Hortons has to go. People are not gonna go, oh my God, I can't get coffee. Like, somebody else is gonna
someone else will provide it. Yeah,
exactly. And so the temporary foreign workers, it's been in the trucking industry. It's leaching into airlines. They want pilots to be temporary foreign workers. Like, the temporary foreign worker program is a ruse. It's this narrative that we can't get Canadians to fill this job, and we can get Canadians to fill this job, but we want to do it on the undercut and the lowest wage possible. So we're going to create this program. The whole temporary foreign worker program, it has to go. And then the last thing I'll say is, there's so many of us Canadians that have had good lives, and I'll use the boomers as an example. They're comfortable. They have nice big houses. They got no debt. Unfortunately, we have to get uncomfortable. All of us. We have to push back a little bit. if we want to go and be comfortable, we're going to watch our country turn into the countries that we're immigrating. And there's that, you, Nico, you even said it, you immigrate a third world country, you become a third world country. And Canada has been such a wonderful place for so long because we have high standards. And when the standards start dropping, that's when we all get in trouble. So there's a few things. I'm not sure the can't be in politics thing. That's a tough one. I mean, another American example is Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California, but he wasn't allowed to be president of the United States because he wasn't born in the US. I don't mind some restrictions there, but you do want your local MPs to represent and their riding. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's I actually agree with pretty much everything you said there, Chris. Mocha, I also agree with you. You do need to change. You do need to change, get people invest in politics, but also that takes a long time. There's a lot of work there. I think what Chris is talking about just is really the low-hanging fruit here. If you take away the financial incentive, and that can theoretically be done in a couple months if you had a government with the political courage to do so. You can take away a lot of these financial incentives. These loopholes are not that secret. They're pretty well known. The LMI thing we talk a lot on the show about that kind of stuff. Like I've got a 17-year-old, and last year I was trying to take him around job hunting. We went to every single fast food place, all the Tim Hortons. They weren't interested, and every single one has an Indian worker. And it's exactly like you said. Why would they pay a Canadian kid $17 an hour if they can pay a foreign worker $9 an hour? It's an obvious incentive, and the companies are going to take advantage of those incentives. So why not just remove them? If you do that, I think that will solve much of the problem. Will self-correct. So I think those are both great answers. And it's obviously a multifaceted problem that will require multiple solutions. But I really think changing the financial incentive structure will just cause much of the problem to take care of itself. Mocha, I had a question for you. I don't know if you have a follow-up to that, Nico, or if
Well, I was just going to say, mostly to what you're saying and to what Chris said and to what Mocha said, I'm somebody with balls. I'm not your regular Canadian, so there's a lot of solution to this problem. And as much as I agree with you guys with low-hanging fruit, taking the financial incentives away, what about the millions of them that are still here, that already are Canadians now, that came here under false pretenses, took advantage of a system that my forefathers paid for, that, as Chris mentioned, now can barely live while they contributed their whole life to a system that's catering to immigrants, to fake immigrants that are coming here as foreign workers, that are coming here as international students and applying to become an asylum seeker. We have more than 350,000 ongoing requests right now that spans between 4 to 6 years to deal with those asylum demands. And those people are living on the arm of Canadians. We're the one paying for them. They have vacations. How many videos have I seen of people going back to India with Canadian supplied money, when I just talked yesterday that after taxes, after necessities like food, clothes, housing, cell phone, internet, car insurance, transport, the average Canadian has spent 97% of its income. 97% of Canadian incomes right now, on average, are spent on necessities. Why are we spending money on fake asylum claims? So as much as I agree with you guys, take the financial incentive away, what about the people that are already here? What about the people that are already part of the system? I get it. It's just, at the same time, I agree with you, Mocha, that we in Canada, we don't want the uncomfortable solutions. We don't want to be the bad person. And I think we're so complacent, we're so naive to think that what's happening in the UK cannot happen here while it's happening in front of our eyes. So Rob, I know you had something else you wanted to ask, so go ahead.
Yeah. I think I was going to ask Mocha, and it looks like we've probably got about 10 to 15 minutes left. Hopefully you could get this answered in that time. I know it's a big question. Maybe you could just give us a summary, but One of the reasons I was pretty interested in this conversation is because we often will hear things about like, the Khalistani movement and that sort of thing. And I don't actually know a whole lot about exactly who the players are, what is even, the intention. And I know that this is sort of, this is connected to the World Sikh Organization and whatnot. I was wondering if you could give us a sort of a summary. I know you could probably also talk about this for hours, but if you could give us like a layman's breakdown of what the issue is here and how this affects our immigration system here in Canada.
For sure. Now, I have done a lot of work on this, both in terms of research, interviewing researchers, interviewing PhDs, also doing on-the-ground work in New Zealand, in the UK, in the US, and across Canada, wherever there are significant Khalistani activities happening. In summary, Khalistan is the idea that Sikhs get to have their own country in India, and that would be the Punjab province and some part in that now falls within Pakistan's borders. And they want to have some of the members of the Sikh community want to have their own country. They don't really have much support back in Punjab, but they're very active here in Canada. And that's what the World Sikh Organization is about. One of their goals is to establish Khalistan through peaceful means. They say through peaceful means, but their history, the executives of their history, the history of their executives are not clean. And I go into that I go into great detail in my video about Sikh genocide, where I explain how it's actually not a genocide. And I interviewed a PhD on this. This is a very sensitive topic, so it's not just me saying it, but I interviewed the American PhD who explained that, yeah, maybe it was genocidish, but not genocide. Maybe 3,500 people died, but the Khalistanis would like to make it sound like 300,000 people died, and they exaggerate, and then it becomes this political tool where they say, don't send these truck drivers back to India. Yes. They will be prosecuted. They are refugees. Sikhs for Justice, for example, organization here in North America, they literally advocated for the truck drivers that killed Americans in the US, in Florida, in California. And they literally said, don't send them back, Mr. Trump. They will be prosecuted in India. Give them exemptions so they stay here in US, here in North America. Because if they go back to India, they will be prosecuted because India committed genocide. And there is not a single country in this world that recognizes what happened back then as genocide. So there is no genocide. But so they try to use that to allow their members of their community to stay in Canada. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I've got a quick follow-up. You had mentioned there that it struck me as really interesting, whereas in almost all these expat communities or these diaspora communities, the Khalistani movement is quite strong in Canada and the UK. However, in the actual province of Punjab, it's not that strong. So does that seem, and I've heard the accusation that Prime Minister Modi and the Indian leadership are specifically using immigration to deal with their Khalistani problem. Are they funneling out basically the worst of the worst? Are they funneling the ones who are most active? And when they're there in Punjab, they're not enough to cause a problem, but now they're becoming concentrated in, say, Canada, in the UK, and it's becoming a problem.
Yeah, the current Indian government has been very friendly with the Khalistanis. Not many people would say this or know this, but we know that they've been very friendly. They have lifted bans on World Sikh Organization executives. World Sikh Organization founder, for example, Gyan Singh Sandhu, he was banned from traveling to India, but India lifted that ban. Why did India lift that ban? that's a question that Indian government needs to answer, but they've been flying under the radar. I don't want to get into too much details about foreign politics since I'm not Indian. I have not been to India. I only know so much as the internet permits, and my sources tell me, especially through the independent research of Mr. Bob Ray.
Chris, did you have something to add to Rob's question?
Not really. I don't know all the tentacles that Mocha knows. Yeah. He seems to know quite a bit more. My case was just one example. Like there's so many of these students that come over and they've found actual fake schools. The driving company that gave Mr. Sidhu his license, they're out of business. There's no record of his license. So there's this whole, the tentacles are everywhere. So that in my experience, that's been my experience, but it is everywhere.
Agreed.
So we are a bit over time here, but I wanted to give you guys a chance, both Mocha and Chris, to speak about whatever's going on right now. If you have something that you're promoting, if you have something that you want to put out there, please do so. And Chris, I'll let you start, and then I'll go to Mocha.
Yeah, I don't have anything. Obviously, that I've been my sole goal right now is to let the legal process happen. I've got a very narrow focus right now, and that's getting Mr. Sidhu deported. What we've talked about today is a lot larger than that. But for my family's peace of mind, I feel like we need a small victory because we've had nothing but a collection of losses over the years. And I just want people to stay out of it. And I want politicians to say, like, don't get involved. Like, it's not your place. Let the legal system, do its job, and let the law be the law. That's it.
Mocha, was there something you're working on, something that you want to promote, something that you want to put out there?
I just got back from South Africa. I went there for an investigation, and I cannot discuss the details of it, except that I've been there, and I have basically went inside the mouth of the monster, and I have survived. I'm back, and I will publish my findings soon. But it does relate to corruption, misrepresentation, scam, people's lives being destroyed here in Canada as a result, government inaction, government turning a blind eye here in Canada. And yeah, when it comes out, people will be aware. But basically, I also wanted to add something to what Chris said. The goal is to get Sidhu deported. There is a risk, there is a chance that he may not be deported. But if we work and keep this subject within public's attention and create public pressure to ensure that there will be a political cost to any politician who grants him amnesty from the consequences of his criminal acts, then I believe there is a chance where they will stand down and let the process play out and let him be deported.
Well said. Chris, I don't know, a quick question for you. Are you part of the petition that's been going on to have that man deported? Are you aware of this? Are you part of that petition? Yeah. Is that something you support?
I mean, obviously I signed it. I do support it. I don't know if it'll have teeth. I did talk to the guy that started it. They actually got 11,000 signatures, and they did deliver it to his lawyer's office. I don't know how much of an effect it'll have. But, other than people getting in the way, I would just like the legal process to follow through. And I'm hoping that Canada Border Service Agency are dotting their I's and crossing their T's to make it happen right now. we do need enforcement. We can't be soft. If we're soft, we'll get pushed around.
100%.
Even more than we are already being pushed around in the country we built. So I agree with you, Chris. I hope you get your wish, because that man has no business being here. I could not care less about his children being Canadian. There's nothing stopping them from going with you. If they don't want to go with you, that says a lot about how they care about you. Just putting it out there. So
Exactly.
I really have no pity for the man. Zero at all. So Chris, thank you for coming on the show once again. Thank you for doing what you do. My sympathies are with you and your family. And yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And same goes to you, Mocha. Continue doing the great work. I absolutely love what you do. So thank you, and continue doing it.
Thank you for
Appreciate-
having. Thank you
Appreciate
for
you
having.
guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
guys.
Absolutely,
both
guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Oh, there you have it, man.
Yes. Did we talk about the sponsor already?
Oh shit! Good point. Good point. No, actually, we did not. But we'll finish on this. So the sponsor of the Political Orphans is Miss Cleo's Pet Treats, 100% natural, healthy dog treat, free of preservatives, additive, and fillers, made by hand right here in Canada. Not only are they made by hand, but the meat is sourced locally from Manitoba farms, so none of that Chinese meat. So if you know that your dog deserves better, go to Cleo's Cookies and Treats.ca. Use the discount code Political Orphans and get 20% off your entire purchase. If you look in the description below, the link and the discount code is there. And that is it for me, man.
Yeah, we're gonna put a pin in there. Excellent conversation. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that. If you are new to the show, if you're just tuning in and you want to support the show, please consider becoming a member. You can do that through YouTube for the low price of $2.99 per month. Also, buy us a coffee, which you will see a QR code in your upper left-hand corner of your screen. And of course, another way to support the show is keep coming back. Throw those comments in there. The show is heavily based on audience engagement, and we will get to them. Whether you agree with us, disagree with us, we don't really care. Just throw them out there. Other than that, folks, excellent episode tonight. Great interviews from both Chris and Mocha, and we will see you guys tomorrow night. Have a great rest of your evening.
Peace.